as I've mentioned to you in a prior conversation, like I have a LGBTQ series that I've been selling abroad. And just very quickly, you get into certain meetings and you see people physically move back because obviously in many countries around the world, unfortunately, homosexuality is still criminalized and another just frowned upon, unfortunately, still to this day. How have you seen that evolving, especially as you're going into the marketplace and you're making these partnerships with Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, 3 countries that are known already to be very open-minded. But as you venture in other markets like Latin America or elsewhere, how do you see society changing, basically?
Yeah, I was of the view that the changes were going to come relatively quickly. When I say 2006 on, I really felt there was a strong momentum in favor of LGBTQ rights. And to some extent, I still think that's true, but there has been a lot of pushback in various places. And it really has been, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, in some cases, 3 steps forward, 4 steps back. And so there is a lot of reactionary pushback in various places around the world. So it's not sort of a uniform progress. And countries that were becoming, more gay friendly, like Brazil, for example, has a new president that's not that way at all. And you get countries like the Philippines as well that was heading in the right direction and now is stalled. So there isn't sort of this uniform improvement. I would say that, the biggest challenge was that the more traditional big companies around the world, because sort of every country has that sort of concentration level of 2 or 3 big companies, were very conservative. And if you get into a country that's highly Catholic or certainly highly Muslim, they usually can be more problematic. You see that with, Poland and places like that in Europe and Hungary, or you see it with, a lot of places around the world in Indonesia or places like that. We saw it in Latin America, where a lot of Latin American big cable companies were very, very shy. I think the biggest difference is sort of twofold. One, there's been a lot of iconic LGBTQ series that have kind of broken down doors, whether it's Queer as Folk and Transparent and others that have made a difference. The other thing that's happened within media is there's been more characters show up in more mainstream shows. There's been, the Will and Graces, and there's been shows like that, and more characters. The gay doctor in the show, the gay lawyer in the show, the gay brother, and all this sort of stuff. And I think that's
twine just like normal life.
Yeah, and I think that's been something. And interestingly enough, in our early years, if a show had a very dominant character from the community, second, third, fourth person even, we would take a look at the show because it had a gay element. We don't do that anymore. And I think the biggest change is that our world has become more gay, in that the shows that we look at are very much more community focused and need to be authentic. And I think that's part of the digital situation right now. I think as the community looks for more authenticity, looks for members of the community both in front of and behind the camera, and the stories to be more true to life. And I think that's the overall thing. And the reality is that much of the world hasn't caught up to that. So what I'll oftentimes find is when we're talking to people even if people are excited in other territories, and a couple that I talked about, they're still at a different stage. Like they want, for a good example is coming out stories. People want to do coming out stories. People want to do gay marriage. Well, we did coming out and gay marriage stories, more than a decade ago. Our audience doesn't really want to see coming out stories now. They don't really want to see gay marriage stories anymore. But people do want to see that in some other territories because it's kind of new and novel, right? So there are different levels within the communities around the world. So we sort of have to correlate to that a little bit when we're pitching people. But your comment was exactly right. We very often found resistance in strange places. And the comment that I was least favorite of, that I got the most, was, I don't have a problem with it, but other people might. So in other words, I don't want to take a risk because it's my job, but, because somebody might call and complain. And, that was thing in Canada when one of the head cable executives, Jim Shaw Jr., made a big deal and saying, oh, I don't want to be in the call center when that channel launches. People are going to complain. People are going to call. And, we launched in Canada and nothing happened. It was the things that people think are going to happen. We've had this too, where we've launched in territories and you've had all these people sitting around nervously thinking that the sky would fall down. This happened in South Africa. We did a linear feed to start with Mnet, who owns Showmax. We always said we should be an SVOD channel and on your service there, but they wanted to do a linear channel. And the problem with the linear was it meant we had to sort of take some of the programming down a notch that we wanted to have on there, like no nudity. And so we really cleaned it up and made it very family friendly. And they literally sat nervously as the channel launched, waiting for, something bad to happen. And we were just going, it's not going to be a big deal. And it wasn't. It really wasn't. It worked out pretty well. And after a while, they were pretty comfortable with it. So we did end up going in the SVOD way. But it is interesting to watch because, I wasn't really there in 2001 when Pride Vision launched. And apparently it was like that in Canada. And you get it in the States too now, too. I mean, this is one of the really interesting parts about where we are as a business is that, we are in Canada ahead of the US in this respect. Not to say that there aren't, lots of people in the US who feel differently, but there is a significant segment of the US population that has real issues with LGBTQ rights, as you know. So we don't fight those battles the same way in Canada as they are in the US. So
I think Canadians might be a little bit more polite and quiet about it if they have views that disagree with you. Unfortunately, we're known to be polite, but maybe also passive aggressive.
You know what? You see this, right? When a certain right will come up, and I see stuff where certain people running for certain political parties, won't do this, won't attend Pride, and this and that. So we do have this stuff in Canada, but we get hate mail from this country as well that is just ridiculous all the time. So there are people, and I think we have less of them than a lot of other places, but they still exist here.
So do you feel you're running an enterprise, but I do feel like you've got a social mission as well in order to give that voice to Canadian LGBTQ community? We
do. I think about this quite a bit because how lucky we are here to be able to have that mission. It's frustrating in a way because you're constantly having to knock down, barriers, and you're constantly getting into fights you shouldn't have to get into. But on the other hand, it is the privilege to be part of something where you're spreading, the mission around the world. And I talk to so many people in other countries and other stuff. And so, it's nice to, from time to time, be an inspiration. It's nice when some of your programming really gets picked up and noticed in places. And we've had stuff picked up all over the world.
OUTtv provides that voice, has a TV channel, linear TV channel, and now an app. And just even though it is a business, the reality is you are, having an impact on social change, no matter how difficult that might be in certain circumstances. I applaud the work that you guys are doing.